Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Game Over Ottawa. Maud and Charlie back again for another off-season episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the Atlantic Division standings, which of course pertains to the Sens. We're pretty much also going to be answering where we think the Sens will end up in the regular season standings in this episode too. That's the main point, really, but thought it would be fun to also talk about the other moves that the teams in the Sens division have made as well. So I don't know about you, Charlie, but I feel like it still looks like a really tough division this year overall, eh?
Yeah, I mean, historically, it's been a brutal division the last. God, I don't know how long it's been where like it feels like any like 6 or 7 teams could make the playoffs out of this division every year. It feels like the last few seasons at least, and I feel like there's more of a discrepancy between the top few and the bottom few than usual as of like maybe the last year or two, but it's still a very, very scary division. So, I don't know about you. I've never put out standing predictions publicly before, so like this could really come back and bite me. Um, I have done standing predictions the last like 4 or 5 years in a row though, and they've been okay, sort of. I have a history of overrating the Sens the last 2 years, especially, but I think every Sens fan has. I don't know about for you if you have like any
It,
like
yeah.
predictions we can go back and look at
It
and make
seems to
fun of
happen
before this one.
seems to happen every year with us overrating the Sens lately. I feel like even before we made those like flashy additions that Pierre Dorion traded for, like we were always just like, oh well, the young players will take a step forward this year and we'll at least be a little better. And then it just like never seems to happen. We had like 1 year,
Yeah.
2 seasons ago, I think, when we had DeBrincat, where we were kind of close to the playoffs, and then it was an immediate step back. So, yeah, in terms of predictions that I've done before, I think last year I had some bad takes, pretty much expecting like Florida to not have a great regular season just because Ekblad and Montour were both injured at the start of the year. I thought they were going to have a rough
Right.
start because of that. But no, Bill Zito did an amazing job signing some depth defensemen to cover up for them. And they were perfectly fine until those guys got back. And I think I was saying that Boston was going to be a little more average than they ended up being. I think I had them like, I don't know if I had them below the Sens, but I think I had the Bruins and the Sens like both as the wild cards, which the Bruins were way better than that and the Sens were way worse than that. So my predictions are not always great. I feel like there's a lot of narratives in the offseason that often don't end up actually playing out once we get to the regular season. But I don't know, in terms of the division this year, I feel like certain teams have just kind of made a lot of lateral moves, especially when it comes to the teams that are close to the Sens in terms of out of the playoffs but trying to get in. I feel like none of them have taken a huge obvious step forward where I'm obviously like, oh yeah, that team's definitely going to make it in this year.
Yeah, I think out of everyone, honestly, and I'm probably biased saying this, I feel like the team that took the biggest step forward is Ottawa. Not necessarily because I think they had the best offseason, but because they addressed the biggest position of need in goaltending. And I think they've gone, and the fact that this team has gone from, a tandem that had an 890 last season to Linus Allmark is such a huge, huge jump that I feel like the Sens, out of everyone in the Atlantic, made the clearest step forward and biggest improvement. Um, but kind of like what you were hinting to there, nobody else in the division got worse. So, or like a lot worse. Like you said, a lot of lateral movements. So, um, we've talked about, so we know we know where we both put the Sens. Spoiler alert, same spot. We have the Sens in the exact same spot in the division. And another spoiler alert, doesn't seem like we have too many huge changes from the actual standings from last season. We've both been fairly conservative with this. So I think that just proves like, yeah, most of the teams haven't seen a huge improvement or seem to be worse on paper. Despite it feels like there's been a lot of moves in the division, but nothing super, super crazy, I
I feel
guess.
like a lot of ins and outs for both teams that have kind of just resulted in me thinking that they're gonna be in about the same spot as they were last year. Like you said, the Olmark move could be the biggest X factor within the division of upgrading a team's position, like, positionally in terms of what we had last year for the goaltending, because obviously there were bigger name acquisitions like Gensel to Tampa, but they also lost Stamkos. So there's situations like that where another team may have brought in someone really good, but they also lost another player that was pretty good too. So you are right that Olmark could be a bit of an X factor for the Sens here in terms of that is such a huge addition to upgrade the goaltending, whereas these other teams, they did bring in good players, yes, but some of them also lost some pieces too. And then, like, there's also, in terms of the teams that we're going to put below the Sens in our standings prediction too, I feel like most of them kind of just didn't really do anything.
Yeah, a lot of teams just kind of um I, I don't know if afraid's the right word, but almost afraid to buy during free agency, or maybe it's just a matter of the bottoming out teams can't attract free agents as
Yeah, might
easily.
just
That
not
could
be
be it
attractive
too.
options.
But it definitely feels like the teams sort of towards the bottom were like, you know what, let's just enjoy having cap space for
Mm-hmm.
now.
And we might as well get into who we have ranked below the Sens. I'm sure we both put Montreal last in the division, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like I feel like I didn't pay too much attention to their offseason, but then when I went and looked at their list of roster moves in the offseason, they were the team in this division that really didn't do anything at all. I feel like they just gave contracts to younger players like Slavkovsky and Guli, which are good deals for the future, and they
yeah.
just added more young talent with their draft picks, but they didn't really do anything to alter the NHL roster this season. Nothing notable anyway. They traded away Jonathan Kovacevic, but they have so many young defensemen that it shouldn't really matter. And it's a bunch of young defensemen who still have to learn to play in the NHL consistently. So I think it's probably still going to be a bit of a rough season in Montreal. Just a really young team all around, and they didn't make a huge addition. So I feel like you have to keep them at last in the division. And if they do better than that, that's going to be like an amazing season for them.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that might be, one of those other teams that's been out of the playoffs for several years now, bottoming out completely unexpectedly. But I want to say that as soon as next year, or maybe even the year after, like Montreal won't be, especially close to the bottom of the division. But this division is just so tough. I feel like that depends more on the other teams than
Yeah,
Montreal and how they're
exactly.
performing. But I mean, like you said, the Slavkovsky contract, the Gully contract, those are two contracts I think are going to look incredible in 2-3 years. Um, just especially when, as they should be getting better as a team, like having those what should be bargain contracts. Um, when everyone else is coming to the NHL, it should be really, really nice to have. I do think Montreal is going to be scary in a few years, but just
Hmm.
not right now.
Yeah, they should be taking big steps forward within the next like 2 seasons, I would say. I think we need to see Cole Caulfield really break out and have like a 40, 50 goal season. I think he has the
Yeah.
capability to, but it's just a consistency issue. And yeah, Slavkovsky took a big step forward last year, which is great. So if he can build off of that, they're in good hands in terms of the young talent that they have. And obviously, it'll take a couple of years for Demidov to show up too, and that could be a huge X factor for him or for them when he does show up.
Yeah, I do think that, obviously a lot goes into I think at this point, everyone knows how good Nick Suzuki is, but the main thing is, yeah, like you pointed out, the young players like Caulfield absolutely needs to actually show that he is a 40 goal scorer, not just hypothetically. Um, and Slavkovsky, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of a tired joke at this point that like already a bust, right? Like we I think we saw specifically in probably the second half of last season that okay, like it's legit.
Hmm.
He's going to be really, really good. And that, I mean, that contract is a huge bet, just like the Tim Stutzle contract is in Ottawa when it was signed. I think it's going to be just fine. And then who am I forgetting right now? There's somebody I'm forgetting that had, oh, it was Kirby Doc, because Kirby Doc missed basically
Oh,
all of last season,
I
right?
forgot about him too.
So Kirby Doc only played 2 games last season, had 2 points, but put together a really solid 22, 23, 58 games, 38 points. And like people forget he's still only 23 and missed basically all of last season. Um, would anyone be that shocked to see Kirby Doc develop into basically a point per game player? I don't think so. Like third overall pick, right? I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah, third
third
overall pick in
overall.
2019. So Montreal is so loaded with young NHL ready talent, uh, including a couple that are like just, I think, going to break out next season. So this might look silly. I don't think it looks silly right now in August saying Montreal's the worst team in the division, but say a couple teams bottom out. Like this team has enough young talent that could all have that breakout season at the same time. I don't think playoffs are going to be anywhere near the end result of the season, but like they could finish sixth, and I don't think people would be like that shocked, depending on obviously on how like these young players play out. But that's the thing too. I feel like the difference between second and sixth place in this division could be like barely double digits in point
It's
totals.
not going to be a huge difference, no.
No, but I feel like Montreal should be the last place team. But yeah, like they got some really good young, potentially breakout talent right now.
And we haven't even mentioned Lane Hudson either, who seems like he could be a Calder
Oh my god.
candidate. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Oh,
the thing for me with that
damn
is I
it.
think he'll
Yeah.
probably come in and put up a lot of points. They already have, I think, Mike Matheson as like the point getter on the first power play unit. Maybe Lane Hudson will come in and take over that role. I don't think it's gonna.
Yeah.
I don't think he's gonna have the type of season that will propel them up the standings, but he's going to be able to come in and establish himself as well. So the growth of him is going to be key for the Habs to move up the standings in future years.
Is he a right shot as well?
I
In
think
my
he's
head, he's a
left.
right
I
shot.
think he's
Is
left.
he left? Okay. I'll have to check because if he's a right shot as well, they might as well just trade him for McDavid today. Um, no, he's got. Why am I? Yeah, you're right. He's a
Just
lefty.
the
Okay,
left.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Put him with. I don't know how the Habs would set up that because you got Matheson, Gooley, and Hudson. So you
I
just
think they've
double up
been
on lefties
playing.
on the second
I think
pair.
they've been playing Gooley on the right side. I think I read that the other day.
Oh my God. Can you imagine a Hudson Gooley? Like if they just go Matheson, do you want to anchor Matheson with Savard? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what their most common D pairings were in the last year. Like I feel like they've been one of those teams that has a ton of injuries all the time, so they're constantly rotating guys in and out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how it's gonna line up on paper. They might be trying out some new combinations this year, especially with Hudson coming in.
Yeah. I mean, like the Sens fan in me doesn't want the team to succeed, but like it'd be a shame to watch Lane Hudson play with David Savard all season. It won't be quite as bad, but it feels kind of like Sanderson dealing with Hamonic his rookie season.
Yeah.
Um, So I don't know. I don't know what the best setup is there, but yeah, no, I completely forgot about Leighton Hudson. That's oh my God, that's gonna be a prop. They have so many good young players in Montreal. This is brutal.
It's scary. They're gonna be scary
Yeah.
soon. But yeah, unless Hudson comes in and is immediately as good as Quinn Hughes, I don't think it's gonna be enough to move them up the standings yet. But next year or the year after, you got to look out for them for sure.
Yeah, I think that the Atlantic has to have, well, maybe doesn't have to have, but like for the sake of everyone, for the sake of the fan base of every team in this division, I feel like because I'm looking at my prediction right now, and I feel like a team has to drop around Montreal. Like Montreal's got to be at least close to a team in the division this season.
I would say like
And
Montreal will be last in the division, but they might not even be bottom five in the league. I think there's much worse teams in all the other divisions. So
yeah,
even saying that Montreal will be last in this division is not necessarily an insult or anything. I think they'll be like close to the teams that are one spot and two spots ahead of them in the division.
yeah. I mean, and obviously, like this statement and depends a lot on the progression that we see in those young players this season. But like right now, I would not be shocked to see them pushing for 2026 playoffs, like at
Yeah,
all.
I think so. I think that's probably the
I think this
target for
team's going to be
them.
scary.
Yeah. And from there, one spot above the Habs, it's basically the decision here is either Buffalo or Detroit. And it doesn't make too much of a difference because I think these teams will be close to each other in terms of overall points. But I did put Detroit below Buffalo, actually. What about you?
Exactly the
Same thing,
same.
same thing. Nice.
Exactly the same. I just feel like Buffalo played below what they should have last season, and I feel
Yeah,
like Detroit was right about where I expected them to
that's
be.
exactly what I was going to say. Oh, well, actually, a little bit different. I thought that Detroit overachieved a little bit last season. Just
Really?
when I looked at their team on paper, I think it doesn't really look that good, and I feel like their goaltending is always a huge question mark too.
Oh,
So
for sure.
I don't know. I think again they'll be a bubble team, but last season they were in the playoffs for like 70% of the year and just fell out at the end. I don't think
Yeah.
they're going to be doing that again. I think they're going to be sort of like on the outside looking in for most of the season, but I could be wrong. I just don't see like a major step forward for them this year. I know they have a lot of really good prospects coming up. It'll be Simone Edvinson. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but it'll be his rookie season, and he should be a huge player for them. But I don't know if he's going to have a huge impact in the first season. So I think it's similar to
Yeah.
Montreal, where I think a lot of their young guys who aren't on the team yet are going to have a huge impact like 2 years from now. This year, I don't really see it.
Yeah, I think goaltending and defense is the big thing for them. I think like up front, I mean, their top line is going to be what probably DeBrincat, Larkin, and I don't know.
Raymond.
They put I guess yeah, Raymond. Then you got Tarasenko, Kane, and probably Andrew Kopp on the second line. Um, so I think that top six is fine. I think it's a totally fine top six, like a top six that can, be your core forward group to push for a playoff spot. But the defense and goaltending, I mean, first of all, goaltending. Let's talk about whether or not we think Cam Talbot's going to have back-to-back good seasons.
Yeah,
And even then,
he's
like,
so hit
was
and
last
miss.
season good or was it just a hot first couple
Yeah,
months?
the first few months were good, and then it was a bit of a fall off. David Riddick was playing a lot of their games in the second half of the year, so putting Cam Talbot as your starter right away, I don't know. I guess it's going to be a three-headed monster because you also have Huso, who's inconsistent too, and then Alex Lyon, who
Yeah.
was quite good, but also we don't know if he'll keep it up. He's a bit of a late bloomer.
Yeah, so I don't have a ton of faith in the goaltending, but I have even less faith in the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Just in order of cap hit here, I will start with Mo Sider though, because he's going to have the biggest cap hit of the defense. He's still unsigned, still an RFA. Um, but Mo Sider like probably hasn't played up to the potential that we thought he would be at through this many seasons into his career. Like he hasn't put together a season as good as his rookie season, I don't think, since then. But then you got Ben Sherratt, Justin Hall, Ollie Mata, Jeff Petrie, Eric Gustafson. And
It's
then, yeah,
just
like you
mid.
said,
It's a bunch of
yeah,
mid.
Edvinson could show up and be another Mo Sider as far as like just quality goes. Absolutely. Super high pick. But like, God, that I have zero faith in the Red Wings being able to like suppress offense at all.
Mm-hmm. The way I look at it for their offseason is it was basically on forwards, you added Tarasenko and got rid of Fabry. At Tarasenko, Fabry's not great. He gets injured a lot, but at Tarasenko's age as well, it's he's less and less of an impact player at this point. And then on defense, it was Jake Wallman out, who I did like. I thought he was like their second best defenseman. He's out, and in is Eric Gustafson. So I'm like, that's not really an improvement either. I don't think it's significantly worse. Gustafson will probably be helpful on their power play, but like
Yeah.
I don't see what's going to cause them to take a big step forward this year. I think it'll be just a further development year. They can get a couple more young guys into the lineup and hopefully they establish themselves.
Hmm.
I don't see them making the playoffs.
No, oh, I almost want to say I'd be less surprised seeing Montreal make the playoffs if those young
Oh,
players really, really all
oh
like
my
have that
god.
same insane like breakout season. If Caulfield scores 50 goals and then you see Kirby Doc stay healthy and have an amazing season, Lane Hudson puts up 50 points as a rookie defenseman, and then like the goaltending potential issues in Montreal just kind of fix themselves and say like, I don't know, you get like a group of three goalies all playing 40 or fewer games, end up with like a team 905 or something and surprise everybody, like maybe. Um, but I don't know. I feel like Detroit can outscore teams, but I feel like God, the defense and goaltending just scares me so
Hmm.
much.
Yeah, you mentioned Montreal. I would take Sam Montembeault over all of the Detroit goalies. So
Yeah,
if
me
he
too.
can if he can have just as good of a season as he did last year, and even if you say that about the Detroit goalies too, like it's pretty close between like Montembeault and Talbot. But I
Yeah,
would pick Montembeault. So
yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely.
I don't. It would probably be a bit of a hot take to say that Montreal would finish higher than Detroit, so I'm not gonna say it. But I'm also not gonna say that it's impossible either.
Yeah, and do we are we nervous at all about the fact that, I mean, they have all the cap space in the world, but are we nervous about the fact that Raymond and Insider are both still not signed?
Mm, Probably not. I think trying to negotiate both of those deals at the same time could be a little tough in terms of they're both trying to get probably as much money as they can, and Eiserman needs
Yeah.
to figure out how it's going to work long term and still have some room available for other young players coming up when they need their new deals. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I think that's the main thing about their offseason is that they didn't add a ton just because they needed to save their cap space for those two guys. So I don't really blame Eiserman for not like making a huge splash. And
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe he tried to and just wasn't able to get it done. I just it made sense for him to save a lot of cap space to get those contracts out of the way first.
Oh, for sure. I don't think they're like one, big contract in free agency away from making the playoffs. I mean, what are the big contracts in free agency that we've seen other than Tarasenko this year? You go back to like Ben Sherratt and Justin Hall, like,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
the thing. Most of their free agent signings before don't inspire too much confidence either.
yeah, so I don't know. I'm not in on the Iser plan. I'm not.
Yeah, and I'll also say for a little bit of Alex DeBrincat hate, I don't think that he can really lead a team's offense. We saw him have the hot streak at the beginning of last year and then fell off an absolute cliff.
Yeah.
He's probably a 30 goal, 60-point guy on average, which is really good, but it's like I was saying about Montreal, they need Cole Caulfield to start scoring 40 plus. And DeBrincat has done that before, but he has not
Yep.
done it consistently, so that's a concern as well.
Yeah, he hasn't done it without prime Patrick Kane, and he does not have
Hmm.
prime Patrick
He
Kane
has
on his
old
line.
Patrick Kane now.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's what we're feeling about Detroit. We probably both have Buffalo next in the standings.
Yes.
I think Buffalo to me is similar to Detroit, where they just didn't do much outside of a bad trade, outside of a trade that had everyone really confused when they made it. So I can't. I will say this one though. I think it is entirely possible that the Sabres make the playoffs ahead of the Sens, or
Hmm.
even if both miss, it's possible again that the Sabres finish ahead of the Sens. I think these two teams are really similar at where they're at in their rebuilds. But yeah, they didn't have the big splash similar to Detroit. So I don't see a reason to just be like, oh yeah, they're definitely going to move up to make the playoffs this year. I think if Tage Thompson can get back to the form that he had 2 years ago, then that's gonna go a long way. And we know Rasmus Dahlin can get close to that like Norris conversation. So they definitely have the guys who can pull them into the playoffs. I just don't know if it'll come all together just yet.
Yeah. God, I like their depth everywhere more than Detroit.
Oh yeah,
Um, I have no problem with looking in the net. He had what, a 9-10 last season, totally fine. Do you? I don't want to ask this question if you have like the team stats up in front of you
I
for
don't.
the Sabres. Do you know how many points their leading scorer had last season?
Oh, it can't be a lot because Thompson had a down year, and just like quickly looking at the list of forwards on their team, like first of all, I would guess that Rasmus Dahlin had more points than anyone. Is that correct?
He is tied.
He's tied for first. So is
Mhm.
it like him and Thompson tied?
It's him and Alex Tuck.
Okay, I would say it was probably like 55 points.
Okay, it was 59,
Hey, it was pretty
but
close.
yeah, I think it's safe to say that we're not going to see Tuck, Darlene, Thompson, uh, Cousins, um, not Middlestat. He was traded. And Skinner's gone. That's also worth. But like, so Tuck, Darlene, Thompson, and Cousins. I mean, yeah, there's no way
It's
they all don't like. None of them crack 60 again, right? Like, there's no way. Um, I
hmm.
feel like Darlene. I mean, Darlene's shown 70 points. Cousins has shown nearly 70 points with
Yeah, he
68.
took a huge step back.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows what Tage Thompson actually is?
He's a wild card at this
Um,
point. Like, I don't even
yeah, his
know.
point totals are 14, 68, 94, 56.
What a
Um,
drop. 94 to 56. Oh my
it's
God.
yeah, 47 goals to 29 goals. So even in like an off year for Thompson at this point, which I mean is only really 1 year removed from his breakout, 29 goals, 56 points. It's not great in 71 games, but like
It's
I
second
feel
line
like this
numbers, you
is
know?
yeah, I feel like this is a team with a whole bunch of guys that are going to bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like offensively, like I mean, also Alex Tuck, 79 points just a year ago. Which maybe had a lot to do with Thompson, or maybe it's just a matter of them both playing well at the same time. Um, JJ Peterka in his second season, 50 points. That should probably
Yeah,
improve
he
too.
was
Like
good.
I think offensively this team is going to take a step in the right direction here.
I
Not
agree.
necessarily because they're developing, but just because like there's no way none of them crack 60 points again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the offense should improve. And on defense, you got Darlene, you got Power, you got Bowen Byram, as long as he can stay healthy for a full season, hopefully. Um, after that middle stat trade with Colorado. Um, Samuelson, like Henry Yokiharu. I think the defense is really solid. Um,
It's definitely better than Detroit's, I would say.
it's better than Detroit's, and I would even say it's probably better than Ottawa.
Could be, could be. I
If
think,
Byram actually develops the way he's supposed to and stays healthy, Darlene, Power, and Byram is nuts.
mm-hmm.
So
It's it's
I
not
think
like
it's
it's
really good.
a huge bar to clear Ottawa's defense, so that is one thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
but they have the guys who can do it because it's a bunch of young guys with potential. Darlene is already elite. Power, we're hoping he can break out as elite. I mean, Buffalo fans anyway. Byram, he's
Just
kind
hockey
of
fans in general.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Byram's kind of on the cusp. Definitely a top
mhm.
4D though, and same with Samuelson being a top 4D. Yokoharju pretty good too. It's a bunch of young guys who are all talented, all good skaters. Compared to Detroit, where I feel like it's a bunch of old guys who are slow.
Yeah, Buffalo's got an above average goalie, a very above average top four that will only get better since half that top four hasn't hit their peak and they're super young. And that's not including Tallinn, who can still improve, and like forwards that should be scoring 80 plus points. So I almost put Buffalo ahead of Ottawa,
Yeah.
but the homer in me won out.
Yep.
So
Same. I think it's gonna be neck and neck between the two of them. And
he's so tight.
yeah, and while we're there, we might as well just move on to the Sens. We both put them fifth in the division, which I feel like is the most lukewarm middle ground take we could have gone with because they are like fifth could be in the playoffs, it could be out of the playoffs, depending on how the wild cards shake out. If I had to
Yeah.
say one way or the other right now, I would probably say we don't make the playoffs just because I'm not super confident. I don't have like we don't have that much trust in this team at this point other than just hope because they
Mhm.
let us down every year. But I think they're going to be close. I think they're at the very least going to be close, and I'm kind of 50-50 whether they get in or not. But in terms of the division, I would put them fifth.
Yeah, I have them fifth as well. And yeah, uh so I did my standings prediction for the entire league. And the way I have it is they're going to have to beat out the Islanders and I think the worst case scenario is the Caps for the last wild card spot. Um, the Islanders, I mean, who knows? But the Caps, like, they shouldn't have made the playoffs last season, but they've had so many great additions,
Yeah, they
specifically
got better on paper.
Chikrin, Matt Roy, who Sens fans wanted. They acquired Manjapane, right? So, like, even the Sens, even if they do finish at five, it's still completely possible they are, not even within 5 points of a
Hmm.
playoff spot.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sens, Sabres, Islanders, and Capitals are like the four teams looking for those two wildcard spots. Maybe Pittsburgh sniffing around as well, but I think they're not quite going to be there. They're a little bit in a
Yeah.
lower tier. So yeah, it's going to be tough. But I think the Sens are going to be right there, neck and neck with those other teams. I just can't confidently say like, oh yeah, this is the year that they finally pull it off because uh, we made some decent acquisitions in the offseason, but it's not like it's all up to the players and starting the season off well, and it's up to the coaching staff to get the players playing the right way and playing consistently,
Yeah.
because the play over the last 3 seasons has been really inconsistent, really up and down like a roller coaster, and we need them to just finally be steady, you know? So I feel like I can't confidently say that I expect them to make the playoffs until I see a good start to the season.
Yeah, and for me, Josh Norris needs to stay healthy. And if he doesn't, then I think that, I did this with the expectation that Norris is going to be healthy for the season, and if he's not, then I'm probably swapping Ottawa and Buffalo.
Yeah, if he's not, then it definitely becomes much more pessimistic of an outlook. Like,
Oh yeah.
Shane Pinto can definitely move up to second line center and do great, but
Mhm.
if it's still a hole, it's just it makes the depth worse, and then like especially on the wing, like on the left wing, we don't know exactly who's going to be there, if Greg is going to be a left wing or a center, and if you don't have Norris, you just have less options in terms of that. So yeah. And especially because I'm sure I said this last episode, was I still feel like we need one more fourth liner and one more third pairing D just for cheap.
Yeah.
Convince whoever you can to Ottawa for 1 year, because there's still a decent amount of guys unsigned in free agency who are at least okay. Just get them in so that we have more depth options, because I think Hamonic is too close to being in the lineup regularly. We're one injury away from that, and
Yeah.
even on forwards, we're 1 or 2 injuries away from McEwen playing every game too, and they should both be in the AHL at this point. So that's my biggest
Yeah.
concern, is this that this team never stays healthy. We always have injury issues, and I don't think the depth is fully there.
1.9 million remaining. See if you can get two guys in for about 900K each.
Exactly.
Shattenkirk hasn't signed anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'd call Shattenkirk. Be like, hey,
Shattenkirk, Schultz, Barry, any of them.
yeah,
Because none of them are gonna be getting any more money than that at this point. No one has cap space.
no way. Yeah. So I like that you brought that up too, because I do think the Sens in fifth involves Norris stays healthy and they actually fill out the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. I just
fingers
don't
crossed.
see. I don't see the depth in terms of 13th forward and 7th D, and then the options below that in the AHL being good enough. Like unless some guys in the AHL really step up and surprise us, like if Max Gannett is able to way outplay Travis Hamonic and just takes a spot instead of him, or someone like Zach Ostapchuk just being, or Yan Yannick being way better than we expect and making the NHL
Yeah.
roster. But really, you would want all of those guys to start in the AHL. You don't want to rush them in. So unless they really just wow you and steal that spot, they should be in the AHL, and we should have more buffer in between them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. 100%.
So
And
that's the
worth
tough part.
noting as well, goaltending wise,
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact stat or the exact number, but basically in games where the Sens had a 900 save percentage or better, you put all those games together, they're like well above a bottom line
Yeah,
playoff team.
it's a great record from what I remember. Don't remember the
So
exact number, but I remember seeing the stat.
yeah, like they're a playoff team with decent goaltending, and I
Mm-hmm.
think they have more than decent goaltending now. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see.
If the coach can get them playing a solid system, and if Olmark can just put up like anything above like a 905, that's going to be great, and that gives the team a great chance to make the playoffs. Just need the depth to hold up along with those things. But yeah, the goaltending is definitely the thing that gives me the most positivity,
Oh yeah, I
which
think
is
we're- I
strange to say. It's strange to say that
Isn't
as a
that
Sens
crazy?
fan. I know, right?
Yeah, nuts.
But yeah, it's a little bit of a wishy-washy take. The Sens, maybe they'll make the playoffs, maybe they won't. If we want to say a concrete answer, if I had to say right now, I would say I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I'm more like 60-40, and like 60 they won't, 40% that they could. So yeah, so if we need to make the hot take right now, I'm saying that they're going to miss, but they're going to be close. And they definitely could make it and prove me wrong, and I hope they do.
I'm gonna say they barely make it. I'm about 60-40 they will.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say they make it. And of course, I can throw as many asterisks on that as I want, as long as I stay healthy, which is the case for every team, as long as such and such, whatever. Like, yeah. But I'm just gonna say, I think this is the year that they finally do it. And if they don't, at the very least, I think this will be the closest they've been since I don't know, like I can't say since 2017. They made it in 2017. I'll say that this is the closest they've
Yeah,
made the playoffs. The closest, like they'll be if they miss the playoffs, it'll be within
within 5
oh
points, I would say.
over under 5.5 points. I'm saying I'll take the under on that. I think
Yeah, I think so too.
yeah, I think it'll be super super close.
I agree. So, hey, it's not the most positive outlook, but it's better. It's better than it has been for most of the time, even though the previous two off seasons we probably were more optimistic then. Uh,
Yeah,
things ended up being worse than that. So at least our expectation is still better than what we got for the last few years.
yeah. Like I feel like on paper we should have been a lot higher on a team that has, DeBrincat and then brings in Chikrin at the deadline. But like this team has just killed my enthusiasm for anything that isn't decent goaltending to the point where I feel like having Allmark, it makes I mean it probably does make all the difference, but like as a Sens fan, I look at that and that's like 20 points in the standings for some reason to me.
Yeah,
You know what I
it
mean?
very well could be if he plays up to how he has been playing for the last few years of his career. If he doesn't just randomly have a huge setback, or
Yeah.
as long as the team is able to play solid defense in front of him, or at least average defense, because there were stats going around that Boston's defensive metrics were not even really that much better than the Sens last year. It's just that both of their goalies were really good. So as long as we can be decent defensively, and
Yeah.
Omar can be as good as he has been, or even just a little below that, it should be a good chance.
Yeah. 9-10 goaltending, the Sens are in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think so. And and if he gets worse than a 9-10, I would probably also say it's like 90% chance it's not his fault, and it's just the
Oh
team
yeah.
the team in front of him not being able to play a proper system, which is what we've seen for 7 years now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Uh,
that about does it for our Sens prediction. We do have the four remaining teams in the Atlantic Division. Probably don't need to say as much about them, but
mhm.
in terms of how I rank them, I put the Lightning fourth, the Leafs third, the Bruins second, and the Panthers first, which is just the exact same as it was last year. Just because I feel like you have to have the Panthers first after winning the Cup, and they didn't really lose any major pieces, and they got some more good depth in there. Like Nate Schmidt for $1 million is just a insane steal.
Yeah.
And the Bruins really only got worse in terms of losing Olmark, but I think Korpisalo can be a decent backup for them. And they got Lindholm and Zadorov, so that's they're the Bruins. The Bruins never fall off. They're gonna stay like right where they were once again in the regular season. I can't ever predict for them to fall off ever again.
Yeah. So we're very close. I have Tampa at 4, Boston at 3, Toronto at 2, and Florida at 1.
Okay, I can see that too.
Um, because in my mind, like, I mean, losing, it's tricky. So Tampa, I think Tampa gets worse because Gensel and Stamkos is basically like a lateral move. I
Hmm.
think Sergachev for McDonough probably downgrade a bit there.
Yeah, McDonough and
Um,
Moser, right? Because they got him as
yeah,
well. So
yeah.
the two of them versus the one guy, who's better than both of them? It's hard to say.
It's tough, but they also have Vasilevsky, so I can't really ever like really bet against them.
Hmm.
Um, I still think that they're going to be really scary. The problem is at the top of the Atlantic is just terrifying. Boston, I kind of wanted to put them at 2, but just if for some reason Swayman just doesn't have it this season, they don't have Allmark to lean on.
Hmm.
Um, I think. Who did Vancouver sign? It was DeBrusk, and who's the defenseman from Boston? Because they like swapped
Oh,
a forward and a defenseman each.
I don't remember.
Who was it? Because I'm also thinking like if you're
Oh,
comparing.
it was a Forboard, wasn't it?
Oh, okay.
Derek Forbort, I think.
I prefer Zadorov, but I think I prefer DeBrusque to Lindholm.
Hmm.
As far as like what Lindholm looks like today, maybe that would
Yeah.
be a really
They
silly take in a
they
few
really
months.
needed a center though, is the thing.
Yeah. I don't ever want to bet completely against the Bruins. Like we've both learned our lesson with that for sure. But I also think the Leafs are basically running it back with Chris Tanev, who should be a huge help on D. Um, and like, is Matthews going to score 80 or something? Like maybe, you never know.
They might need him to. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's the
the
thing.
Leafs, I don't know.
Matthews has been so good, especially last year. Like if he doesn't score 60 again, it could be a drop for the Leafs. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
I do think their defense and goaltending is better though. It's just that it feels like they need Matthews and especially Nylander. Nylander was so good last year too. It feels like they need those two
yeah,
guys to just be unreal. If either of them are ever to have an off year, then it could get questionable. But I think the Leafs will be fine.
yeah. And then Florida and one. They won the cup, and the biggest name they lost was OEL,
Probably. I can't even think of anyone
which
else.
is, I mean, also he's on the Leafs now in the second pair, probably. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things with the Atlantic. The top four teams: Florida, Toronto, Boston, Tampa. They could all finish with 100 plus points. Um, then God, and again, like if Detroit puts it together, um, even like you know, the Atlantic could have 400 plus point teams with like two or three teams that miss the playoffs by 10 or fewer points. I think the Atlantic is going to be so tough. Even more than usual because now like Ottawa should make the playoffs. Buffalo should bounce back and be in the conversation. It's just Detroit and Montreal that I don't think are going to show big improvement from last season as far as the ones that missed the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to be both around the same as they did last year. Maybe, in my opinion, maybe Montreal a few points better in the standings and Detroit a few worse, but not by a significant amount.
Yeah, so like when you're looking at the division as a whole for like the two worst teams should stay about the same. The four best teams should stay about the same. And then Ottawa and Buffalo should both improve.
But only
There's
probably
not
only
much
one of
room
them
in there.
can. Yeah, only one of them or neither of them will get in the playoffs.
Yeah, so this division is a nightmare and I'm sick of it and I hate everything about it. Um
It's tough because the division is really strong at the top, but it's also the division with the biggest glut of mid teams in the middle, where the worst teams in the division aren't that bad. All the other
mhm.
worst teams in the league are in the other divisions. So then you're left with all the playoff teams or the non-playoff teams in the Atlantic are just they're good, but they're not good enough. You know?
Yeah, it's one of those things where like the top team in the division should absolutely go off for 110 plus points. Like I can't say that I don't think no team in the Atlantic's gonna be nowhere close to 110. So you say like at least one team is close to 110. Like two through six could be like the sixth place team in this division could have 94 or 95 points.
Definitely.
Um,
That's what I would
I think
say.
it's gonna be brutal. I think if the Sens miss the playoffs, I think there's gonna be at least two, if not three, fan bases heartbroken by being like this close to the playoffs and missing it.
Hmm.
God, I hate this division so much.
Hell, I would take. It sounds stupid to say, but I would take being heartbroken by missing by like 2 or 3 points. At this point,
See,
I would be like, yeah, that was a great season. We were so close. At this point, because our
I
bar is so low.
oh yeah, like we're so depressed as a fan base that I feel like I want to agree with you today in the off season. I think after about 80 games of seeing how close the Sens are, if
Yeah.
games 81 and 82 is like what decides it and they miss, I'm going to be so upset.
It would be really
Um,
depressing that I think after like a couple of weeks, I'd be like, ah, well, we were right there. We
yeah.
like, I would believe that we're good enough, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we were celebrating being eliminated in game what like 70 last season,
Yeah.
so that's oh God.
Well, it's going to be really exciting when it comes down to the regular season. It's not the most optimism, but it's going to be close. So it's going to be really entertaining. We're going to have lots of awesome, entertaining games to cover for you guys coming up this season. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and that's also a reminder: game over is still game over. We're just doing extra off-season stuff. We're gonna be live after every single game.
Hmm.
Um, every Canadian market, but Ottawa's gonna have the best show because we've decided that.
Yep. So yeah, be sure to follow both of us on Twitter and subscribe to us right here on YouTube so that you can be notified of those live streams when it comes to the regular season. Yeah, and thank you so much for watching and listening. We hope you tune in October.